All right. Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Bracketology podcast. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always by my good friend Graham Doran. It is crunch time. We are deviating from the usual daily conference plan, and we're just kind of taking a what's at stake approach to this week. But Graham, why don't you go ahead and say something so the entire world can see your background looking like Joey Brackets over there?
Well, yeah, it's selection week, so you got to turn up the heat a little bit. We've got a lot on the line, and my background needs to be ready for the madness.
Turning up the heat outside. I got all the windows open, I got the fan going. I'm still sweating. Tis the season. I won't see the outside, but I'll feel it. So we did the mock committee Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. What is behind Graham is not the mock committee seed list. That's his own, although it's not particularly different from what we ended up with. I guess I can share that at least. Here we go. Go ahead and get there. There we go. So this was the seed list we ended up with. Again, this is our consensus. Graham, what was your, I would say, biggest takeaway from the mock committee? Because you've done this at least, this was your fourth year, I think. I've done this probably 6 years, but we always learn something a little new.
I think my biggest takeaway was actually Villanova, because I think I'm kind of off a little bit from some of the rest of the group. I'm just not buying Villanova's profile, and I think one of the things Rocco said is, they have a very high floor, and that's something I don't agree with. And I think it will be interesting to see what the committee does, because I can totally see where he's coming from. They do have a nice win against Wisconsin, which is really a borderline true road win. And then you look at their metrics, the resume metrics say they should be probably like a 6 seed, worst case, a high 7. But I look at the lack of quality wins at the top of their resume, and it scares me. And I think the way they've performed in quad one makes me think this is a team, especially when you take in the injury factor into consideration. I just don't think they deserve a strong seed. So I think I'm a little bit off from most of the group when it comes to Villanova. That was a big takeaway for me.
I was I was surprised at the lack of love for Miami, Ohio. I guess not terribly surprised, but the consensus outside of the two of us seemed to be yes, they deserve to be selected. But I mean, every single time we were ranking, everybody else had the Red Hawks at the bottom. They were like trying to get them down to 46 overall. We ended up with them at 44. So if they weren't the automatic bid in our scenario, they would have been in a play-in game, which I guess could be their fate if they were to lose early in the MAC tournament. Everybody seemed to agree that the 31-0 season or 28-0, however you prefer to look at it, will get them in. I think maybe Matt was a little skeptical if they were to lose early in the MAC tournament, whether or not they would be making the field. But it seemed like everybody wanted to seed them a lot lower than I do, because I have them up at, I think, 33 overall right now, which is probably the highest I'm going to, even if they were to win the MAC tournament. I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk myself into getting them above the top of the 9 line, but I mean, their SOR is like 20th, their WOB is 30th. Like there are metrics that like them, even if Ken Palm doesn't. And I think just the history of it all is going to keep them from being, an 11 seed. But you were kind of in the middle. I think everybody else was putting them at 8. I was putting them at 1. You were like a 3 or 4 on a lot of votes. So I can't see on your thing, where do you have Miami, Ohio right now?
Is this Sean? There we go. Getting close to it. Anyways, they're a 10 seed. And I think for me, they're going to stay a 10 seed in my bracket until they lose. If they lose, I'm going to drop them to an 11. Is it fair? I don't know if it's fair, but I just feel like if they take a loss, Dayton might be the place they head. I think it makes a lot of sense to me that a team with that complicated of a resume, if they lose in the MAC tournament, you send them to Dayton, let them show whether they deserve to get to the first round or not. And I know a lot of people would say they've done so much. They've already won 31 games. They should be straight to the first round. I'm like, I agree with you if they win the MAC tournament. If they don't, I think it solves a lot of debates. How do they play in Dayton?
Well, yeah, no shit, they're not going to Dayton if they win the MAC tournament. They'd be automatically in the first round.
Yeah, but I mean, a 10 seed if they win the MAC tournament, 11 if they
Yeah.
don't. I think that it just seems so logical to me. And of course, because it seems logical to me, they'll probably end up being like an 8 or a 9, or they'll be an 11 if they win the MAC tournament. But I think to me, it's a reward. The committee has often done this over the years. We've talked about it so many times. They love to send mid majors to the 7 line traditionally. If you have a great year, you win your conference, they love to send you to that 7 line, get you one spot above that 8, 9. I think they'll do the same thing with Miami. They'll be like, yeah, we, to be honest, we don't think you're one of the best teams in the country, but you went undefeated. You deserve a line bump from the 11. 11 just seems too harsh for an undefeated team. That's what I think they'll do.
As we all know, as you alluded to there, once things seem logical, that's when you start to really question whether you're on the right track because the committee's never logical. Um, I was also a little surprised at UCLA, whose resume just seems to be getting cleaner and cleaner by the hour almost. A lot of their previous wins seem to be growing in strength. I mean, they're up to 30th in the net, and like every time we looked at them, they were just hard to put at the bottom of any vote. I don't know. I went into it having UCLA at, I think, 40th overall. Granted, they did win at USC, and part of my concern is that they didn't have any road wins worth mentioning. Now, whether a road win over USC is worth mentioning at this point in the season, we can, agree or disagree on that one. But I think they went from a bubble team to a lock for me in a hurry just by hearing everybody's take on them. So hopefully you guys steered me in the right direction there and they don't end up on the 11 line.
Yeah, I think UCLA is a very safe bet. They just seem like so many of these teams recently where the committee finds a power conference team that has some big wins at home and they just throw them right in between the 8 and 9 seed range and call it quits on them. A team I found pretty interesting was St. Louis because there still seems to be a pretty wide gap of opinions on where the Billikens are.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be one that I continue to look at this selection week and try to figure out where to put them because at this point, I mean, Kerry, we've been doing this every day during the weekday and Sundays too for a few months now. We have a pretty good idea of where we want teams. It's now, to me, just a few teams where I really want to give them just a second look to really think about where I want to put them. Otherwise, it is what it is. I've been tracking this every day. It's the teams are where I think they're going to be, and there's nothing else to do about it except just put your final bracket out there.
All right. So a good chunk of what we want to do this week is just kind of look ahead to the next 24 hours and decide what's at stake in the conference tournaments. And, not a whole lot to look at today. So we decided to rehash the mock a little bit, but we do have the West Coast Conference games tonight. For Gonzaga, where do you think they could ultimately end up? I mean, beating Oregon State's not going to change anything. Losing to Oregon State would change things, but if they were to win tonight and then beat the St. Mary's Santa Clara winner, we ended up with them at 11 overall. I can't see them getting up to a 2 line. So, I mean, ten overall is probably their ceiling.
I mean, right now, I personally have Purdue 11, Kansas 12, Gonzaga 13. So Gonzaga winning
Okay.
the West Coast tournament moves them into that 3 seed range for me and just barely. I still don't even think that would be a lock if they're there. They would have something that I think would help them a lot. They would be 7-2 against quad one, and they would have a neutral court win against Alabama. When you add that up and it's Gonzaga, I think the committee's probably going to like that, despite the Portland loss, despite Santa Clara being their best true road win. So I think Gonzaga almost would feel a little bit more secure as a 3 seed to me than Purdue would be, because I think Purdue would probably have to beat Indiana in their first game in the Big Ten tournament. And if they don't, I think Purdue's falling back into that 4 seed. But still, just so much to play for all these teams. Like when I'm looking at Kansas and Alabama and Texas Tech and Virginia, I'm not that confident. in where to place those teams. I
Yeah.
I personally believe it should be Texas Tech 15, Virginia 16, and I feel pretty strongly about it, but I'm not confident the committee will. It's to me when you get to that Purdue, Kansas, Alabama, Gonzaga, where it starts to get all mixed up. And I look at Alabama losing to Purdue and Gonzaga, and even if a lot of their resume says 3 seed to me, I want to move them back to the 4 for that reason alone. They're just 1-4 against top 4 seeds. I do think that's an important concept when you start to get to the top of the bracket. On the other hand, Purdue keeps losing at home
Hmm.
to everybody, really honestly, like pretty much everybody with a pulse. Purdue loses to at home. That's not really much of an exaggeration. That concerns me. But I ultimately am leaning towards if Gonzaga beats St. Mary's, even if Kansas beats TCU, if Purdue beats Indiana, I think it's going to be Purdue and Gonzaga. And it's because I think Purdue's ahead of Kansas right now. The when you compare, is Indiana a better win than TCU? They're about the same. I don't think the committee will move anybody there. And I think Gonzaga getting that win over St. Mary's would be more impressive than Kansas beating TCU. So I'm ultimately leaning towards Selection Sunday. I think it's probably going to be Purdue and Gonzaga joining Nebraska and Iowa State on the 3 line.
I was not expecting the Gonzaga portion of our WCC conversation to go on for that long. But let's get to the big. I mean, I agree with you. I feel like Gonzaga is trending towards 12 plus or minus one, and we'll see what they tell us from there. Obviously, some things can change completely out of their control, but we definitely went from like 2 weeks ago feeling like there were 8 teams battling for like the number 9 overall seed to now it feels like there are 6 teams battling for the number 13 overall seed. Like it's a different cut line, but kind of the same problem. But St. Mary's and Santa Clara is obviously the big game of the day. We ended up with Santa Clara as our quick count fourth to last team in, so they would be in Dayton as of right now. Obviously, if they win the West Coast Conference tournament, they can't go to Dayton. There's a lot of since ESPN decided to use that entire Santa Clara Pacific game last night to try and drill into our brains the fact that Santa Clara is a lock. There's a lot of talk about whether the Broncos are a lock or if they're even a lock if they beat St. Mary's, which I think they would be like right now. I feel like there's a 60 to 65% chance they're going to be dancing. Maybe that's even a little bit low. And if they beat St. Mary's, it probably goes to about a 98% chance, but I don't think it's 100. And I definitely don't think it's 100 as is. I think if they lose to the Gales, they're probably going to find their way out just because somebody's going to win games eventually, right?
I think Santa Clara to me is the ultimate test of WOB. Like, how important really is WOB? Because if you look at their current WOB and you look at where they're likely to go if they lose to St. Mary's, I still think that's going to be a score that you think should be into the bracket. I just look at the resume and I'm not convinced at all. I am incredibly skeptical of this Santa Clara resume. I think if you just looked at it without any numbers, you think, no,
Mm-hmm.
it should not be in the bracket, especially when you add the Loyola loss. Even if it wasn't for the Loyola loss, I would still be skeptical. You throw that in, that's worse than anybody they're going to be competing with will have. I just, I don't know. I think it's really the ultimate test because I feel like they should be out, but I want to see where they compare in WOB to everybody else because my head says the committee keeps telling us over and over and over again how important is it. Do they really want to send a team out that has a 1 point something WOB if others are down to, you know, 0.01 or something like that? That's going to be a tough sell for them. On the other hand, who really has Santa Clara beaten? If they have one win at home over St. Mary's, is that really enough to get into the tournament? I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, and we were texting about it earlier today. Right now they're at a 1.55 wob, like you said. And if they lose, they'll probably fall to somewhere around 1.1 for now. I don't know how that number is going to hold. I think if we see teams like Texas and VCU and UCF and these other teams that are behind them in the net right now. I think if the bubble strengthens, their wob is going to drop. which will turn into a conspiracy theory because everybody's going to look at their wob and be like, why is it going away? Like we did when that one morning we woke up and everybody had lost like half a wob because it just shifted where the cut line was overnight from, a couple of random results. So, they'll be at 1.1 in the morning if they lose. I wonder where they'll be on, Thursday night, Friday morning after there's a lot more data coming in. And I'm the king of believing in most conspiracy theories, but I think it's just the silliness of using a moving cut line as the target. And you were like, well, why don't they just use what a usual bubble team is? I was like, please define a usual bubble team, and we'll do that. Like it's tough to do, and we didn't really look at the I don't know, but how much did you actually look at the number, the wob last year? Like we kind of looked at the rank, but until like I know you went back and you looked at, West Virginia's wob ended up at 0.79 and Xavier was a negative, whatever, but we didn't really fixate on the day-to-day wob changes, and we don't know how much it could change just heading down the stretch for teams who are going to be idle for the bulk of championship week.
Yeah, I didn't pay too much attention to it last year. I know on Selection Sunday last year, I was just going over doing a seed scrub, final seed scrub on everybody, and I was looking at Robert Morris versus Montana. And I noticed that I just looked at the WOB itself, not the ranking. I looked at the WOB itself and I was like, they're a game and a half above this other team. That's probably significant. And I ended up scrubbing. I can't remember who went which way. I think it was Montana went up and Robert Morris went down. And that ended up actually fixing my seed line on that one because I had one just above the other. And I think that was kind of an eye opening moment for me when I saw that difference in that WOB score as opposed to the ranking and thought, that could be significant too. Maybe the committee's not just looking at this ranking, they're also looking at the raw wins.
So I'm looking last year uh, on March through games of March 10th. St. Mary's was at a 3.48. And then by Selection Sunday, they were down to a 3.19. So they dropped zero point 0.3. Gonzaga went the opposite way. Maybe I'm not including, I don't know. There might be a game in there. I don't know. I'm going to keep a close eye on Santa Clara's number though the rest of the way. All right, so that's for today. Obviously, there's some championship games in the six for ticks, as I'm calling it for Georgia Southern. They're trying to clinch it today against Troy. What's the other championship game today? Hofstra's not the championship game. I don't know. I
Wait
should
one
have looked at this
second.
beforehand.
Did we get to the questions about from Zach, the questions from Twitter?
No.
Do we want to do those real
You,
quick?
you got one? I was
Yeah.
trying to go through my mentions to find it, and people are
Uh,
yelling at me.
Zyler Buchanan says, which team currently in the field has the largest spread on ultimate seed line?
Okay.
I think it's got to
What do
be
you?
Miami, Ohio, as we talked about earlier. They're
Well, yeah,
all
yeah.
over the place. Which team outside of the protected seeds is most certain? Are you most certain is locked into a particular seed line? Outside of the protected seeds, I would say St. John's. I feel really good they're going to be a 5 seed. Maybe even I might say Arkansas. Actually, I take it back. I just think I feel really good about the top of the 5 line is the story here. I think Arkansas being 2-7 against quad 1A, but being so good otherwise just screams not enough for a 4 seed, but too good to be anything but a 5. So that would be my answer there.
I feel like Tennessee just seems destined for a 6 at this point as well. I like where you've been at with Villanova as an 8. Like I can't get them there, but maybe after they lose to Connecticut in the Big East semifinals, that'll finally be the blow that drops them, or maybe they'll lose before then. I don't know. I don't even know who they play in the 3-6 game, but um, yeah, I do think there's a lot still up in the air, more so down around the bubble than the 5 through 8 seed lines, but a lot could change this year. Usually we try not to let it. We're going to try not to change anything after Thursday because we know better. But I think there's some of these early round games are going to shift some things. So in the next 24 hours, we're also going to have two Big 12 games tipping off: Baylor, Arizona State, and Cincinnati, Utah. Obviously, what's at stake is if Cincinnati loses or if Arizona State loses, they're dead. Baylor's still interesting from a overall metrics, more so the predictive metrics than the resume metrics, but they have too many losses. I don't know if they're going to, I don't think there's enough time left for them to get all the way back in, but I think the winner of that game could get a wee bit interesting. And then the only other one is Pitt Stanford. And it's a similar thing. Stanford's more so in the conversation now, I think, than Cincinnati or Arizona State. But if they lose to Pitt, they're absolutely dead. What do you think Stanford does need to do, though? Because if they win this game, they would then face NC State in the second round, which could be winner gets a spot in the field, I think. I don't know if it will be, but it could be.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like it's probably a 60-40 winner gets a spot. I'll take it back. If it's NC State, I think NC State's in. If it's
Yeah.
Stanford, I think it's 60% chance Stanford's in, 40% they're still out. But if Stanford wins an extra game on top of that, they're in the field, and I'm very confident in that.
Do you think Stanford could take NC State's spot?
Yes,
Nice.
absolutely.
That'd be fun. Especially since they just won at NC State. Like I feel like that would be a pretty big if they're anywhere close to each other at that point with two wins away from home, one truly on the road. I think the Cardinal would find their way in. But all right, I think we're set. Or were there any other questions that I missed?
Just the final question that was on there, but not a one that we kind of already didn't go over. But what was the biggest surprise outcome from the mock selection committee? We already talked about that. And what was the biggest variance once we got into seeding? And I think again, is for me probably the Villanova being so different. But we already talked about Miami, Ohio. People were all over the place with that. So I think we already kind of talked about the mock stuff.
Yeah. It was interesting that we like just where we stopped. And I think that's kind of an element of the actual committee that we got to experience there because we seeded 7 lines on Friday and then stopped for a day and a half. And we had 4 teams in holding. We already had the next 8 ready to go. And then all of a sudden Ohio State's profile got better before we met again on Sunday. And I was like, I kept trying to scrub them up because I have Ohio State a little bit higher than where we landed, but it gets to a point where it's just like, this is where we had them, even when results do change. So I think that's a testament to why conference tournament results don't always have as much of an impact as we think they do, or as the broadcasts tell us that they do. But I think that can wrap us up for today. Thanks for joining us on a less structured day than usual. I think moving forward, it'll be a little more interesting in terms of, what games are coming on. But till next time, take care and enjoy the hoops.